Hello and welcome back to the track. First question I have about 2026 is what the hell is going on? Ferrari have a strong chassis, Mercedes have the quicker engine, but are they cheating? Are we going to see McLaren and Red Bull get involved in the Constructors' Championship at all? And what do these rule changes in the Japan qualifying mean for the rest of the year? So much to cover. And before we get to lights out, make sure you guys like the video, comment down below. Let me see what the script says. Your thoughts on if you think the changes done to qualifying was enough or if more changes need to be made. And away we go. And I want to start things off with Mercedes because by now we know that they most definitely have the upper hand when it comes to power units. And once again, they've managed to take just an incredible leap forward when it comes to the rest of the competition. You know, we're sort of having flashbacks now to 2014 when they dominated the sport for what, 8 years? 8 Constructors Championships? Well, something that a lot of people may not know is that Toto Wolff actually decided to pull 100% out of Formula E in 2022. This was in preparation for the 2026 Formula 1 regulations. So what happened was that you have Mercedes who are in Formula E. He decides to take their entire staff, their entire way of thinking in a sport where energy deployment is all there is to pretty much worry about. You take that and you bring them to Formula 1 where split is supposed to be 50-50. You have a history of having a really strong engine and now you're bringing in an entire Formula E team to help you with your engine. Bit of an unfair advantage, but also fucking genius from Toto Wolff if you ask me, because there's no other teams that could potentially come from there to here now. And I think that brings me and a lot of people to a lot of questions. And that is, if Mercedes are doing so well, how is it that their customer teams are really struggling a lot, significant compared to what we're seeing Mercedes do? We've occasionally seen an Alpine up in, you know, the top 6 spots, but consistently every other customer team from Mercedes is doing shit compared to them. And according to the FIA, a engine manufacturer cannot have a quote-unquote better engine than their customer teams, right? They have to have the same engine. There's no ands, if, or buts. However, here's where it gets a little bit tricky because Mercedes are obligated to give their customer teams the exact same equipment. However, they're not obliged to show them how to use it. So you have all these customer teams with what is the strongest power unit, but it kind of seems like they don't necessarily know how it works. And I think that there's something that you could look into that if you really wanted to, right? As like how much more complicated did they make it for other teams when it didn't need to? But that's just part of the game, right? If you don't want that to happen, become your own engine supplier. And the thing is, like, we know this for a fact too, because James Vowell said it. Mercedes gave us everything that they have, but they don't have to teach us how to use their systems and their programs and all of that stuff. That's for everybody else to figure out on their own. James saw the difference that there was from the first race. From the very first race, he saw that there was a big gap. They don't even seem to be slowing down. I mean, in the Japanese Grand Prix, at one point, Kimi had like a 10 to 15 second gap on Piastri, who was running in second. I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't something there that the systems aren't telling the teams, or they're not telling them the right things. And that's just the complexity of Formula One, right? We don't know what this one team is doing. This one team could be doing 1 + 1 = 2, but the other team could be doing 1 + 1 = 3. And the team that's doing 1 + 1 = 3 think that they're right because they don't necessarily know how the system works. And we expected a lot of teams to struggle, but I don't think many people expected McLaren to struggle as much. And even Williams, I mean, they had a semi-strong season at the end of the season, securing P5 in the constructors, but there's really nothing to show for it now. And I understand new regulations, there's a lot that's gonna be unknown, but you can't help but wonder, why is it that teams that were doing really, really well are suddenly struggling with equipment from a team that was doing poorly, but now is doing just amazing? Think about that. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Yeah, that's right. Put your thinking cap on. We've established that Mercedes have the best of the best when it comes to their engine and deployment. However, that creates a problem for them because Ferrari are estimated to be around 25 horsepower down on Mercedes. This is both on part of the engine and the battery, not just the engine, but this puts Ferrari in a position where they might get approval of the ADUO. This means that Ferrari are essentially slow enough that the FIA allows other engine manufacturers to get an extra upgrade during the year. They're allowed a bigger cost cap and more dyno time. Now, this could be good or bad, depending on how teams capitalize on this. But we know that Ferrari have the stronger chassis of the season. We hear it from them in the commentators. The Ferrari don't struggle in the corners or in the getaway at the start of the race. They struggle with the straight line speed. This puts into question, how much are Mercedes sandbagging in order for the other teams to not get the ADUO and everything else that comes with it? All we know is that we have yet to see the Macarena wing or the flip-flop wing or whatever you want to call it wing. Rumor has it that it's going to give them a boost in the straight by creating a little bit of lift, but they have to figure out how to make it close faster or safe. So if Ferrari are able to get that ADUO plus the wing, does that mean that we'll get a head-to-head between Mercedes and Ferrari for the rest of the year? I mean, that sounds very exciting to me, and I'd love to see that play out. Or will Mercedes copy what Red Bull did in 2023? And if that's the case, I hope we see Kimi winning everything and not George Russell. No offense, Russell. Speaking of gaps, are we going to see McLaren or Red Bull or both in the constructors fight at all? I think we can agree that McLaren had a rough start to the season. Emphasis on rough. But despite barely seeing the McLaren so far this season, every time we see them, for however long that may be, a lap or two, they seem to be kind of quick. If you put aside the battery issues that Lando's had and the fact that Oscar just had his first race since the start of the season, and he already got a podium. And even in qualifying, we sometimes see the McLaren splitting the Mercedes or the Ferraris. So I believe once McLaren can figure out their battery issues and create some sort of consistency in their car, and their overweight issues are fixed, then we might see them get involved in the fight. But the same might not be able to be said for Red Bull. Max is just not happy. And honestly, I can't blame him. And everything he's mentioned could be its own video, but the gist of it all is that the chassis is not that great from what we've seen. They're really struggling without Adrian. And the car is just not fast enough in the slow parts, which are only slow now because they have to drive through their slow to recharge the battery, to attack or to defend. If Max didn't have to worry about this shit and they only had a bad chassis, he would not be as unhappy as he is now. But because he knows that the battery recharging is the issue, drivers are finding themselves doing the complete opposite of what they were doing last year. And my boy is not coping well with that. At all. Like I said, I don't think he would be complaining as much if the only problem was the chassis. And Hadjar seems to actually be doing better than him. Not by much, but like noticeable, at least when it comes to the qualifying. And even Hadjar said that their engine is strong, but their chassis is really where they're struggling. So you have the polar opposite of what Ferrari have, because they have a strong chassis, but a shit PU. And Red Bull have a really good power unit, according to them, but a bad chassis. That development war between the two teams is going to get really interesting. So once they start shedding the weight and the car gets faster, maybe we won't see much of an issue from Red Bull, especially when the FIA are already talking about the regulation changes. Regulation changes are going to happen a lot this season. This is something I'm going to continue to cover because after what we saw happen to Behrman in Japan, it really opened the eyes of those who refuse to believe that one, this racing is better, and two, that it's safe. The drivers have been speaking out since day one. Actually, since 2023, when Max was playing in The Sims and expressed that he was concerned for what racing was going to be like in the future. So even back then, the FIA have been getting all this feedback. Doesn't really seem like they did much with it. So far, we've already seen one change done to qualifying. And for those who were confused about how giving them less energy makes qualifying better, I'll try to make this simple. In Japan, they changed the qualifying recharge from 9 megajoules to 8 megajoules. Now this creates a ripple effect because if you go through a lap with only 8 megajoules of energy, then they will derate less during the lap, meaning they're not going to slow down on purpose to recharge 9 megajoules of energy. For Japan, they only had to do 8. Basically, the more they have to recharge, the slower the fast corners become. People notice right away how much slower they had to take some corners in qualifying just to recharge the battery to attack the straight, or lifting way too early. Reducing the energy did make qualifying a little bit better according to the drivers, but it's still pretty early. However, the main safety concern was the crash, and it's very obvious that the FIA should have listened more to the drivers when they expressed their concerns regarding the drastic speed change in cars because of how much they have to recharge. And with no races in April, the FIA put up this statement. You guys can go ahead and pause the video, give this a read. So come Miami, I think we're gonna see the FIA slowly roll back or change the regulations, or at least I hope so, because I don't want to see any driver die on the track, no matter how boring or entertaining the sport is at the current state that it is. I don't care if the races were more entertaining last year or if they're more boring this year. If it's going to be putting the drivers at risk, it completely undoes everything that this sport has done when it comes to safety. But I'm just a viewer and a tifosi. So let me know what you guys think. We'll keep a close eye on the stories because each team seems to have different advantages and disadvantages, and how that development war will unfold might be the only exciting thing that will come out of this thing, especially with all this artificial racing that we're seeing. But you guys know the deal. Leave a comment down below, subscribe to the channel, like the video. I will continue to work on these outros, but today is not the day. Okay, bye. I'll see you on the next one.